Hello, Andrew.
Hello.
So you're on the big screen in the back or in the front of the council room, just so you know.
Okay.
In an open meeting, yes. That's our lawyer.
Welcome, everybody. Hope y'all brought some song and dance and food and drinks, and here we go. Notice is hereby given pursuant to the Open Meetings Act, Smithville, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, that the city of Smithville will conduct a special called council meeting on April 14, 2026 at 4 p.m. in the council chambers of City Hall, 317 Main Street, Smithville, Texas. I call this meeting to order. We're going to skip to number 2, discussion and action on authorizing expenditures from the tax note per ordinance 2025697. Who's my speaker?
That would be Ashley.
Welcome, Ashley.
I guess I'm going over the updated proposal that Avanex sent for the sound system and projector, updating all that AV equipment stuff. And so they came, let me find the page. There it is. So they came back with a total of 46,000, but we can deduct 11, 12, about 13,000 for the projectors that they still included, which we've already said that we're going to still use the old ones, bringing it to right about 35,000. And that will be all the new updated AV stuff plus the streaming audio availability.
Do we have copies of that?
Probably not, because I just got it like yesterday, day before.
I don't believe so, but I do feel like we approved this.
We
a couple
approved up to
months-
35,000, but we hadn't gotten the streaming part of it. And I wanted her to, and you do have copies before the streaming. I wanted her to bring this before you to say, we've got the streaming. We'll be able to use that room to do meetings, town halls. Won't have to worry about copying it and taking it to the library. It'll be straight out.
So how much over 35,000 are you needing?
Over? None.
None?
It is. It's like 36,000, isn't it?
No, I mean, I can do the math really quick. I think it was right at 34 and some change. And so,
Okay, 34.
Yeah. I don't even think there's something approved here.
Yeah, if we've already approved it, I just wanted her to bring it before everybody and let everybody know what's going on. Because
Okay.
we did approve it at 35,000.
and like I said, and I'll do the math really fast on my phone, but it was like right at 34 and some,
Yeah.
$34,000.
30.
Dollars.
Yeah, 35.
It's 35.
Yeah. Well, I know it was a meeting probably 3 months ago. I wanna
Yeah, 3
say,
months,
that
and we
We
approved
received
it.
an initial proposal and I know we struck out a couple of things from the proposal and we capped it at a certain amount.
Yeah,
And it seems like we came in right under that.
we knew that we were gonna get the streaming. We were waiting on that. So we had the 25, it was like 25,000. The streaming's like 10,000
Yeah.
more.
Yeah, so it comes out to $34,640.48 when we take away the projectors and then the warranty for those projectors.
Perfect.
Ashley, what about the speakers? Are they still functional? Or is that part of this package?
So the speakers that are already in the ceiling, those still work. And so
Okay.
this is just gonna update the connection to everything, so it's the Bluetooth and not having to be stationed at the cabinet and things of that nature. So it's just gonna be an easier connection process. And then the streaming and the recording option, that will, I assume, just be a new camera that they'll tie in.
No, it's gonna be some
What?
we have here. Okay.
And the other thing is the projectors just really have no time on them because it was so hard to use the software that came. And they're gonna do something to make that easier so we can use those projectors.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Are these the same folks that originally put in the system?
No, no, that was
That's been how long ago? 2018?
9 years, going on 9 years.
This is Lewis and his group from Avanet.
Mhm.
Okay, the ones we use all the time.
Yeah, it'll be nice to kind of get everything under one company.
Question for Cynthia and Jeremy on this. I know we have quite a few projects with this particular company. Are we getting towards that? I think it's $100,000 threshold for the same company.
Oh, you mean as far as for bid purposes?
Yeah.
We might need to look at that. So I'll make a note to look at it. But if she's got a quote, but
Yeah.
we didn't necessarily go out to the actual bids, because I do know once you get over the 100,000, what was the computers and stuff was 70?
Yeah, but Is that considered a project? Those were
It
computers.
doesn't matter. It's
doesn't
if you
matter.
purchase from one vendor and you get over 100,000, once you reach
So
over,
this would push us
it
over.
has to be to not get the finding
Mhm.
be bid out. So if this would kick us over,
Well, just the computers were 70, so, and then we also contract with them for our AT.
usually the IT stuff, you
IT.
don't, yeah.
That doesn't have to go out.
I don't know. Let me check, because if she does, we may have to
Yeah.
do something on this then. Go. I'll check with our auditor and make sure, because some services you don't have to do that
Okay,
bid process.
perfect. Yeah.
So.
Number 1, discussion and possible action regarding utility bill structure, possible adjustments, including volunteer fire department associated expenses. Who's going to speak about this?
I guess I get to speak about it.
Get your microphone.
So I just put together some basic overview. It's not in-depth. I'm not qualified to give a full history of the volunteer fire department, but I did want to just speak to it briefly. So just in general, Smithville Volunteer Fire Department, established in 1895. And it is a registered 501c4. In FY 2025, there were 35 individual volunteer firefighters who served the community of Smithville. Some of our favorite employees are part of that group. Next slide. And in general, just to get an understanding of how the volunteer fire department is funded, generally it's through fundraisers, through individual donations directly from interested or individuals in the community, and also a city fee of $5 on the utility bill, which is what we're here to discuss today. And so just kind of a history of the fee itself, there's been 2 iterations of the fee. In 1984, the city instituted a $1 voluntary donation. The fire department actually approached the city and requested to have a fee added to the bill. But at that time, the powers that be determined that they would actually have it as a voluntary fee as opposed to an actual fee. In 2023, the city raised the fee to $5 and it became mandatory. And the way that happened was Resolution 2026-032. And just, I found it interesting that I found actually the minutes from 1984 where they actually, you can see at the very bottom, they actually approached the city and requested that the city allow them to be inserted as a voluntary donation, and the motion did carry unanimously. So that gets us to today. I thought it would be a good idea to kind of look at historically what the revenue versus the expenses have been. Just like any other, we treat the volunteer fire department like a department of the city. So whenever we raise funds for that department, if the revenues do not exceed the expenditures, the city essentially makes up the difference. No different than it would the library or any other agency of the city. So in 21, you can see that we raised roughly around 22,000, but however, we expended almost 83,000. 22,000 versus 96, and you can kind of see if you move forward. In 23 is when the fee was roughly increased from $1 to $5, and you can see that there was a significant increase in the revenue at that point. So in 24, what I see is that we raised 123 and we expended 197. And you can see 141, it was about even in 25, and then we're halfway through the fiscal year in the current 2026. So we've raised just about as much as we've expended. We've expended just a little bit more. So the city funds the volunteer fire department in 2 ways, basically, and this is probably really good information for the community. The volunteer fire department provides invoices that are provided for equipment that they need and anything that they need to provide the service that they provide. Those invoices are paid directly by the city to those vendors. It is not money that's sent to the fire department. We pay the vendors for the things that they need. The second way that we fund the fire department is we actually reimburse them for services that they provide. So for example, there's a $15 call out per person, $7 per meeting per person. And the only check that is paid to the volunteer fire department is paid annually for the fire run. So we pay them a lump sum for those two things at the end of the year. The city does also pay insurance and utilities for the fire department buildings and the equipment that they use. So we do insure those things. Okay, I thought there was a little bit more than that. Okay, so I just want to kind of give a brief overview, kind of how we go about funding the fire department. We do have Andrew online with us, and he's representing us from our general counsel law firm. He may be able to speak to any questions that you might have of legality or any questions, because we have been approached with some questions as to whether or not this fee is something that we can actually assess. And we've gone through some research and made some determinations. And I don't know if Andrew, you would like to speak to that, but if you would, I just don't want to mess up any of the legal jargon that you might use or the legal language that you might use. So are you prepared to speak to that, or would you like to speak to that?
If they have specific questions, I think that'd be more appropriate, unless the council would like otherwise.
Okay. I think at this point, it'd probably be good to entertain questions if we can, and determine how we want to move forward.
I think one of the first questions that I have, and I guess this is a question I know the answer to, but would like it out in the public as well too, is this fee, because this fee is mandatory, are we allowed to impose it? And if not, could we move towards it being a voluntary fee?
We looked at it, our office looked at it, and we do not believe the fee is legally proper as a mandatory fee. The Texas Water Code, section 13.143, does specifically provide for a voluntary fee to be provided with appropriate disclosures on the utility bill for volunteer fire department services. But the mandatory aspect of it is improper.
If someone could help me understand, how are we supposed to be set up? What's the standard protocol, the relationship? It's a volunteer fire department that's been treated as a quasi city department, but I mean, who's running the show, and who determines the amount of money that's needed to supplement the fire department's budget? Do you know what other towns of our size do in this situation? Have we studied that in terms of peer groups? Anybody?
I did speak, or I personally did not speak, but I had information provided to me by the Giddings Fire Department, and their situation is very similar to ours, where it is a separate entity that was provided through Mr. Gertie's office, those connections there. But it is a very similar size or similar in style as way that they set up their fire department. Because that was one of my original concerns originally was, why is this a separate entity and why is it not part of the city? But yet we have a budget that makes it seem like it is part of the city. And then where do we have the overlaps of, how much resources are going to the city? Are we properly accounting for it and all those kind of things? And so I think my next question after that will be maintenance. I don't know if you have something first before that, but.
Well, no, I'm just like, if it were a department, then we would treat it as such with all the rules that we apply and the audit processes that we apply to all of our departments. But this seems to be something that's just been going on, and we really don't understand the relationship. I mean, are we designed to supplement shortages, or are we just specifically each year going to, I always thought it was a department, and that's shame on me.
It is a department. I mean, when you get your budget every year, we present you with a fire department budget that we look over, and, with the city manager and we get together, we put those numbers together and it gets presented to you. The budget there is totally separate from their 501c3, their fire department. They have their own thing, their own money, which we have nothing to do with. The city has a department that we, just like we have a rec center, a recycle center, a library, whatever, we treat the fire department in a way, in the same way. It's a department, and you see it when you get your budget every year. And those is just, you look at it every year and you have the ability to say, yeah, I want to fund that, or no, I don't want to fund that, you know?
I guess,
And that's the way it's always been. It is a department per se,
and this may be like,
the money that we spent, you know, and then that's the only money that we can spend, and they have to give us those invoices. Like I said, it's not, oh, you get 80,000, we're just going to give it to you and you can go spend it however you want. There's line items that's specific that have to be spent within that budget.
I guess where my questions and where I get the confusion is when you look at the police department, police officers, and I understand we have volunteers, but we also,
I mean,
if you look at the police department, they are employees of the city and they are covered by our insurance. If you look at the library, they're employees of the city, they're covered by the insurance. If you have volunteers, correct me if I'm wrong, but volunteers at the library are not going through a separate 501c3 to volunteer. They're going directly to the city to volunteer, would be my understanding.
I mean, there's some volunteer coverage for different boards and things on our insurance. I mean, and that's just the same way the fire department is, where we pay their workers' comp, you know, because TML allows us to be, the fire department to be on our insurance.
Okay. And that admittedly is news, because I think that was actually one of the questions I asked earlier in this process was, are they on our insurance? And I don't think at that time I heard that answer. So
The only thing that, I mean, their workers' comp, yes, and then, you know, all the cities, but those are actually city-owned buildings and stuff.
yeah, for sure.
But yeah, they allowed us, many years back, I think they had their own insurance, and then there was some issues, and they got put on to the cities. TML allowed them to be put on to our insurance and get the good rates and coverage that they get, because it's better coverage.
So who owns the equipment?
Technically, the fire department, the titles, if it's a title to a specific vehicles, that's in the fire department's name. The buildings are the cities, if I'm not mistaken.
According to the tax rules, they belong to the city.
The buildings belong to the city, the equipment belongs to them.
So Andrew,
All the
Andrew,
vehicles.
Andrew, can you hear?
Yes.
I mean, we're calling this a department per se. What are the requirements for a department to be officially a department of the city?
Well, I mean, I think the volunteer fire department is a pretty known type of entity. It kind of enjoys status both as a separate private nonprofit, but under the law, it's often treated, it gets some of the benefits of being a public entity as well, some of the immunity protections, things of that nature. It can be, so I think it's, I mean, it can be treated as a department, quasi-department, but it's not technically within the city. The funds can be budgeted for it. In this context, I think the city should probably take a look at whether it's advisable to enter into a ILA, interlocal agreement with them, explicitly outlining the services and compensation pieces to this. I think that might be the connection piece that we were kind of getting at.
Yeah, I mean, we need to clean it up and make sure we're doing it right is my concern. It doesn't seem like we really have a full grasp of what we're doing, and so we would need to codify it through an interlocal agreement or something like that. That's what you're recommending?
And what would be the difference between an ILA and an MOU in this? Because I believe we do have an MOU.
I checked, and I mean, I haven't thoroughly looked, but I don't know that there was any agreement between the two. And I don't quote me on that, because I've looked at this issue as quickly as possible to prepare. And so there might be something historically way back, but I'm not aware of it.
Jeremy,
If there is, I would like to take a look at it.
did we sign an MOU earlier this year when all the nonprofit stuff came up?
Not specifically with the fire department.
Okay.
We signed it with, I think, 4 to 5 different local nonprofits, but not that
Okay.
Organization.
And Andrew, I guess also, so the fire department serves a much larger area than just the city limits. They even go into our neighboring county. I'm understanding that correct, Tyrone, right?
Yes.
And so at what point do we as a city not, again, I don't ever want to have this perceived as diminishing the work of the fire department, but as far as our obligation and our responsibility as a city, where does that play into their very large geographical area that they support and service compared to our city limits?
It seems like we also have a need for a clarification from the fire department in terms of, can we?
The only time we're gonna go across county lines is during a mutual aid call. If Fayette County calls us to help them respond with the problem, then we'll respond over there, but our actual jurisdiction stops at the county line.
Oh, okay. I thought you regularly serviced in Winchester and no? Okay.
No, just if we get toned out past the county line, it's either Winchester or LaGrange. There is times where they'll call for a mutual aid call and we'll go help them, but that's not our.
Oh, okay. I misunderstood that then.
And our police department has the same agreements.
Absolutely.
Yeah, with other jurisdictions as well.
Andrew, is there a recommended structure that we should have on this to make sure that that we do it correctly and don't expose ourselves to any type of liabilities?
Are you talking specific to the mandatory fee or?
Well, not more in general right now in terms of clarifying exactly what the relationship is and should be between the fire department and the city with the supplemental funding that we're giving, regardless of the source.
I think it would be advisable to look at whether an MOU or ILA is appropriate under the circumstances. I would need to look back at the historic arrangement to see how that has played out and the statutory justifications. But as of now, I think it's something that should be looked at definitely.
So to our knowledge right now, we don't have an MOU or an ILA. So I would think that that's possibly an action item that we would need to ask the city manager and general counsel to look into. I mean, this is, for me, this is separate than the fee. We can get to the fee part of it, but right now we've got to understand exactly how we're set up.
Exactly. And I think as we continue to kind of dive into it, it just has appeared to be this black box, not trying to suggest impropriety, but it just was really confusing to understand the structure. And I think the ILA will definitely help with that structure and be able to figure things out. Cynthia, I guess so if we had in the 2023 tax note, if we had ended up purchasing the fire truck as it was originally proposed, would we essentially be donating that truck to them? Or would that truck have belonged to the city?
Well, I guess I don't know that the truck would have been, how much would have the truck been? Wasn't it the truck going to be more than
How much you say?
200,000. Yeah.
was it 250? Yeah.
No, it was more than that.
It's like 240.
Oh.
I remember 240, but
Yeah, we had like 250 in there and I was at TML and I looked at the truck that they were wanting and it was like 120,000
Yes.
more than what was.
Typically, if
Back
the,
then.
if the city puts the money in on all the vehicles, then those vehicles are titled in the city's names. Now, a lot of the fire department stuff that they currently have is vehicles that they purchase with their funds, and that's why it's in their name. It just so happens it can be covered on our insurance.
But so if we had gone
PML,
through,
PML allowed us to be able to cover their stuff, but most of that was purchased with their funds. So,
but if we had gone through and actually purchased it,
and I know in the past, when I've done the fixed assets, I don't think there's any more. I think most of them all now belong to the fire department because, like I said, they've done it. In the past, there was some that were titled in the city's name.
Okay.
But that was long years ago. But like I said, most of the stuff now the vehicles are actually in their name.
and then I guess, Andrew, a question that has come up and some of the things I've talked about with Tyrone in conversation is, and maybe Trey or someone else will be able to speak to it, but essentially what are the means? Because we get text messages every time the fire department gets sent out, and a lot of them are medical requests from Acadian asking for support, which is now being run by ESD3. You also have wrecks that are happening, fires that are, fires that are caused by people doing things that they shouldn't be doing in their grass and brush fires, whatnot. At what point are we allowed to help the fire department to start billing for these calls, like for Acadian, for ESD3, for accidents to bill insurance? So at what point are we allowed to assist to help them earn money through that, or?
Well, is it being done? Or y'all billing insurance companies?
To my understanding, a while back, way before I took over chief, we used to bill every time we go out to Rex or I guess before Acadian, we used to bill and then it just stopped. I don't know what happened while we stopped, but at one point we were billing to assist with the lift assist and all that good, all that stuff. Rex, to my understanding, we're billing insurance wise for our time being out there because pretty much almost 85% of our calls, pushing 90, is all county, not city.
Should we have a mutual aid agreement or some sort of agreement with the EMS division about how they call you out and what's going on with that? Maybe if we had an interlocal agreement, we could make a decision about how much they would have to pay you, and you would have some sort of structure for that.
I would volunteer to assist with that, not to cut him off, but
Yeah.
if maybe the volunteer fire department, given our working relationship, if we could meet together, I'd be willing to bet we could work something out and help. It could be mutually beneficial.
One of the things is I know that the Lost Pines volunteer fire department, we only have a few left everywhere around. I mean, it used to be there were numerous volunteer fire departments. There are very few of them now. So we definitely want to make sure that we're helping the other volunteer fire departments, but like ambulances that get paid and things like that and wrecks, there should be a way for you to be able to supplement what you're getting to do that. And if Jeremy's ready to go for that, I think that's a good idea.
I think it's awesome. I mean, currently what we're hearing is that nobody within y'all's structure at least is responsible for billing and going after the insurance payments that are likely due in a lot of these situations. So it's could be an opportunity that we need to get back into the habit of taking advantage of. But I really appreciate that Jeremy's willing to go forward with this. I think, from us, before we go to the utility bill issue, it's about, let's sit down and get this worked out and maybe work with Andrew so that we come up with the proper structure, knowing that we're dotting our i's and crossing our t's and not exposing us to not knowing where the money's going at times, and have a real firm process in place.
Well, again, I
I
think,
don't know if that requires a motion. It's just an action item.
Yeah, action.
and I think what Cynthia was pointing out is based on how we treat them as a department, they go through the same auditing process that every other department goes through. Yeah, from. the
Well,
money
even
that-
on their side of the ledger where,
Well, no, we have no responsibility for their side.
I mean,
well, I mean, for me, the
That-
question is, should we be? It's just like when we use hot proceeds with the chamber, we require periodic reports on.
yeah, but we're not using we're not collecting their funds. That's theirs. That's not ours.
Well, we're
So
collecting utility fees.
Mitch, there's,
But that's the utility fees to fund the department that's in our budget. That's not to fund their stuff.
They have fundraisers and other things where they bring in their own money.
I got it. I'm talking about how the money that we're giving them is being spent.
It's in your budget. In the budget book, there's a fire department budget, and it has specific line items that states what they're allowed or what they're supposed to be spending.
And that
those-
gets reconciled through their they report back on and reconcile that, or you're just paying receipts or bills that are being submitted?
They get invoices, whether it be the electricity, if they go out and do testing on their equipment, or they do maintenance on their equipment, or they buy new equipment. If they do that, and it's an invoice that they submit to the city to have the city pay, the city pays that. We make sure it's in their budget line item, and then we pay those vendors directly. We don't pay the Smithfield Volunteer
Yeah.
Fire Department.
I want to give them as much support as we can. I just
And
want to
tha- and
make
that's
sure
what-
that we're
yeah,
not
that's-
exposing
it-
ourselves to.
That's their budget. If you look at the Department 130, you see their budget, and it specifically tells you what we spend their stuff on.
so I'm gonna ask a potentially difficult question on this. My understanding is there is a criminal investigation into the nonprofit, and a warrant has been issued for money laundering. How do we know
Which
these?
nonprofit?
The fire department's 501c4.
The 501c6? There's a fraud investigation right now?
Money laundering is what I'm
Money
understanding.
laundering? Well, that's kind of what I'm talking about then.
I understand that's not the city's funding, but I guess my question is, because I know that a lot of money laundering tends to happen through inaccurate invoicing. Is there any potential opportunity that some of these invoices that the city has paid could be invalid invoices?
No. All invoices are either emailed to me or my president or treasurer, and I'm the one that has the code send to the city.
And not trying to imply anything on you at all, but do you have mechanisms in place that you know for sure that the work done or the services provided or goods ordered on that invoice have been acquired and done for you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like most invoices they get is gonna be gear. So once I receive all the gear, even talking with Tiffany, when I turn in the receipts, she would tell me, don't turn in a receipt until we know we have received everything. Truck testing,
Okay.
that's kind of stuff that we turn in. Any other little things we try to take care of, but most of our big things was sent to the city.
Okay. And then as far as maintenance of the vehicles, my understanding is you're using a third party for maintenance.
We have, sometimes we use third party, sometimes we use our city warehouse guy.
Okay.
Our maintenance guy, yes.
Yeah. And so that was something that I wasn't sure was 100% one way or the other, but it seems like it's a mix of both.
Yeah, some of the big stuff that our city guy can't get to, or he knows a lot about trucks, but most of the pumps, we'll let the third party guy take care of it. But other than that, the city warehouse, our warehouse maintenance guy, take care of all of our maintenance of our trucks.
Okay. Perfect.
So the action is to direct the city manager to get with the fire department and general counsel, do a thorough review and come back with a recommendation on how we should be structured going forward.
If that's the council's decision, yes.
Yeah.
And from what I've heard, I have two steps. One, which is to get with the city attorney and draft potentially an ILA that would, I guess, would reinforce the existing relationship that we want to maintain. And make it completely legal to where we have no questions of legality. So that's step one. And then step two would obviously be to work with, the fire department to see if there's some way we can assist in terms of the billing and the assist. That's what I believe I've heard.
Yeah, I 100% agree
Okay.
because even at a
Yeah, I believe-
minimum, if we can spend $1 to help them collect 5, I mean, that's gonna allow the tax money to go so much further, and we're not gonna have to support them as much financially, especially going into the future as this area grows. But hearing that 90% of the 85 to 90% of the calls are not even inside the city limits, but the city of Smithville is a very strong contributor towards the fire department. I think helping them and letting that money go further, I think would be really great. I guess the fee would be the next thing. I
So,
personally,
so we all agreed on that direction?
yeah,
I mean, it's not a motion, so.
with this fee, there's a $5 mandatory fee. Currently, it is in our master fee schedule. And that was, from what I understand, as you mentioned earlier, thank you, Trey. It was originally $1. It was proposed to be an increase to $2 to $2.50. And then
My understanding is
ultimately
it
came in
went
at
from 1
5.
to 5 is what I've learned.
Okay. Yeah. I personally, I know that there is suggestions that I don't know if we're allowed to say where those suggestions have come from.
As it was a attorney-client privilege document, I would say no.
Okay. Can you talk about what the proposed options are? I don't know where I'm allowed to speak on this.
I cannot, not without probably speaking to the attorney, but there have been options that have been proposed. Ultimately, the point is that if it's in the interest of the council, or if you guys want to make that decision now, you can, we can get with the attorney and he can propose options or explain those more in depth. But as far as the question today, it's about the fee that currently exists
Yeah.
and how we want to move forward.
So ultimately, though, it's already been determined that mandatory is not legal.
Mandatory is not legal for a fire department collection according to Texas water rules. But I think that I don't want to not support the fire department. I don't think that it would be a wise decision to remove that $5 fee, the $5 mandatory fee, and just get rid of it. I do think that a lot of the people in the city do have goodwill to the fire department. And
there are those who contribute more.
Yeah. But for those that can't afford it, I mean, the reality is this is a very economically depressed community. And we should give them the option to remove that fee if it's something that they can't afford. And so I do think that we should move that to be a voluntary fee.
I've got no problem with it. It's clear that it can't be mandatory, so I fully want us to be transparent. I mean, I don't want us to rename this or call it something else. It's a $5 voluntary fee on your utility bill that goes to the fire department.
Yeah.
But you have the opt-out option. I have no idea what that's going to end up creating in terms of the amount of money. Maybe we get more money because we publicize it and say you can give more than this. But I just want us to be as straightforward as possible.
Do we know why in 2023 it went from 1 to 5? It jumped that much? I mean, I know it was before your time, Jeremy. I'm just kind of talking out loud here, but why did it go from a $1 voluntary fee to a $5 mandatory fee? Was there, Jennifer?
Can look back, but I know that we raised the call out rate for the fire departments. That was one part of it, is that we wanted to raise the rate. But that's not the complete.
And I recall that part. It was about raising the call out fee. That was if I recall it, I think I was on council. That was the intent, was to get that amount up to something that's less than offensive.
Yes.
Yeah, we were losing volunteers, so we raised that to 15 so we could maintain a group of volunteers to keep them.
The mistake was you made it mandatory.
Yes.
I don't know if it's appropriate. I believe Kristen has done a lot of research on this and does have the video that she can't play the video, but she can at least speak to what was said in that meeting. if the mayor will allow that.
I haven't done citizen comments, but we are going to do citizen comments. I was just letting everyone speak up here and the lawyer, but please know that there will be citizen comments.
And I appreciate you having this discussion before the comments. Just to answer your question, Councilmember Reed.
Kristen, we can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now? To answer your question, I'm going 100% from memory. I believe it was August 23rd. It was proposed during the meeting. It was, Councilmember Jenkins was correct. There was a discussion about raising the call out from $10 to $15. At that meeting, the proposal, and if you look at like the document that it was proposed, what you were talking about, an additional $1 to $1.50. Then when they came back, I don't have the date off the top of my head. It was the next budget hearing, I think the September 6th. Then it was $5 and it was mandatory. And the idea behind that was to raise the call out from 10 to 15. There was $80,000 in bunker gear that they were attempting to, I believe it was to outfit 4 new firefighters, I believe. And there was also a discussion in that one about a new fire truck, which was tax note, not the fee. But does that answer your question? Okay.
Is there a balance in the utility fee fund that's been collected and not used yet? In terms of the $5 we've been collecting, is there a balance? It's all spent?
So there's no balance. I mean, if you look what we had been collecting in revenue, what Jeremy showed you on the chart a while ago, going back the 5 years that we showed, the revenue collected was 20,000 and the expenses, what we did and paid for the departments was well over what we've got. When the $5 fee came in, you can see that it was pretty well even. So there's no extra funds
Okay.
where those funds have all been applied to the fire department to fund those items.
Do you have any, I forgot to ask earlier. I believe it was 2023 was the year that there was a large expenditure. Do you have any context what that was? Did that have anything to do with the brush dump, or it was just a huge outlier? I believe it was 2023. It was in Jeremy's
The
notes.
revenue was.
Brady, you know what we
tripled or
spent,
something.
spent all that money on that year in 2023? Was it
2023.
was it radios that you had a whole bunch of radios that you needed at that time?
It's up here behind us.
No, I think
Cynthia, do you
So-
know what?
What comprises that 197 is what you're asking?
Correct, yeah. Just a rough
There's-
number.
There's a detailed list here. I mean, there was 23,000 spent in clothing and uniforms, 16,000 in minor tools and equipment. I don't know exactly what.
Yeah, that's fine.
23 for automotive maintenance, 30,000 for building maintenance, 17,000 for insurance. The support for their fire runs that they get was 23,000. And then there was a tools and equipment, which was a capital asset. I believe that was the Jaws of Life. That was 33,500.
Yeah, I do remember that.
And that basically, besides the basic utilities and other stuff, that's what comprises that 197.
So how did we cover the overage? We transferred funds?
Well, in your budget, we budgeted 193,000 when the city did the budget that year. And so we make it up just like we do in any of the other departments, but at budget time.
I think what you're probably missing here is that ideally there should be 3 columns each year. There's the budget, there's the actual collected, and then there's the actual expended. So if the budgeted amount was there, you would see that it would be very close to what the actual expended amount is.
Okay, yeah, because when I'm looking at it, the revenue from the fee collected is 70 something short of what was spent. So we had to make up that difference, correct? So where did the money come from that made up that $70,000?
Because it's just like in the other, when you do the budget process, you have all the various departments. We have X amount of revenue and you split that between the various budgets. And so you've got sales tax, property tax, franchise fees, all those different fees. And if there is a difference between what the city collected for the $5 fee, there's 70,000. So it came from those other sources.
So you're saying in 2025,
Because-
the $5 fee amounted to the 141,646 and 28 cents. And then we spent a little bit more, but that came out of other revenue sources from the city.
Yeah.
Okay. And so at this point, we're in a good position. Yeah. And it's not like, because that was my understanding, was that there was not suggesting that the money was being hidden or being misappropriated or anything like that, but just simply that there was a positive fund balance for the fire department and that potentially some of the $5 revenue had not been spent yet, but that isn't at this point what you're saying.
Not by the previous years.
Okay.
And we're at 70,000 so far collected in 2026, but that would be on pace to collect approximately the same 141 as last year.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Mayor,
Because you do have the $5 fee, but then there are people that do contribute extra. So when you're looking at that $5 fee is coded in. So it's kind of hard to distinguish without going back and looking at every utility bill and seeing what is actually billed for the $5 fee versus what we do collect from other sources, because people do donate.
okay.
There are several people that donate every month extra money.
Cynthia, how many utility customers are there actually that are putting this $5 bill, $5 fee?
I'm going to say it's around 2,000 and something that are getting that bill. I'd have to pull the utility, but it's around that number.
Thank you.
I know, Jeremy, right when you made your transition, I believe even during your transition, when the former city manager was still here, there was discussions about, how do you set benchmarks for the fire department? How do you ensure that you do have this agreement in place? And I know one of the thoughts that came up was the insurance rating to try to, I believe the proper term is to decrease the rating in order to make it better. Is that something else that you can focus on as well too in the ILA?
I think it can be a long-term goal, but I would have to work closely with subject matter experts to figure out how best to get to that level, because it may not be something that's easily achievable with a volunteer versus a dedicated fire department. I know there's certain training that they would have to have, equipment. So there may be a huge gap between where we are now versus changing our ISO rating enough to affect our insurance rates.
And I think if we know what those things are, we can understand what the costs are, and we can definitely kind of work to help support them long-term on that.
Yes.
So this 140,000, how does that compare to the total fire department budget from the monies that you guys raise? Is it 50% of y'all's budget, 10%? What's your total budget over there, including the 140 that we're giving?
I think he would probably have to, it's kind of off the cuff, so I think he probably would have to look and do some research.
So, our big fundraiser that's coming up next month, we normally is around 50,000, and then once we take out, we're about what? 40, about 42,000. And then the fish fry, can't remember what, 14. Yeah, so.
And those are really all of your.
Yes, fundraisers, yeah.
So,
And donations.
So when you're reviewing, Jeremy, you would take a look at, what's the budget? Is it $1 million?
It sounds like it's 225.
No, that's what I'm asking, but what's that number? Do we need to if we do this right, do we need to take it to a $7.50? Is there, do we need to raise this to get y'all more money? But it's going to be on a voluntary basis anyway, so we really don't know what the contribution is going to be. We don't want to do anything that hurts the fire department. I don't.
Well, as far as, it's hard to answer because every year we would have to go and figure out what capital items that we plan on purchasing, and that's going to drastically affect what their budget is. So it could be, you know, significantly larger one year and it could be smaller the next year. So I would hate to say, you know, I don't want to answer prior to going through that process.
Okay.
So I guess at this time, I'll make a motion to. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, we'll do, thank you. Citizen comment? She's the only one. You just, yeah, you know what? If you just, hey, girl, I'm hungry, so. But we want to hear what you have to say because I know that you've been reporting on it. So I know you'll be courteous of the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a number of questions that I'd sent the city. I think it was March 31st and then again on April 6th. And some of those questions have been answered. I think one of the biggest that has not been answered is what was the legal justification for this? Was legal counsel, Mr. Devine, were you asked and did you provide legal counsel? And if so, was it just not followed or was legal counsel provided? And yeah, that's the big question that I'd like answered that is still not answered. I guess this is public comment. We're not doing that. So, I was also curious, you know, it wasn't listed specifically on the resolution. All the other ones, the fees that came out, they were listed. This was not. It was, as the kids say, it looked sus. So it looked sus. Sorry, I've been hanging out with younger people. That's what they say.
Suspicious.
What does it mean?
Suspicious. Sorry, a lot of not young people on the dais.
Yeah, a lot of not young people. The word you're saying is S-U-S. It looks
US, I believe. I don't know.
suspicious.
Suspicious is the answer. My apologies. And then the question that we still haven't really talked about is what did we specifically spend the money on? You pointed to the paper from, I believe that would have been expenses fiscal 24. And I received that. But the promise from the fee from that year was $80,000 in bunker gear and a raise for the raising the fee. When I look at that, the vast majority of it looks like mechanical maintenance type things, but I don't know. And that's specifically what that question is still here, and that has not been answered. What did we spend the money on? Not the buckets that are there. I've got those buckets, but what did we spend it on? Did we buy bunker gear? Did we instead go maintain vehicles? What did we actually spend that $197, whatever it is, $1,000 on? And versus what did we say we were going to spend it on? And that question still has not been answered. The big thing that was a major red flag to me was this money's going into the general fund. So we collect this as a fee. We tell residents, hey, residents, you're going to be a good person by paying for this by supporting our fire department. And then we tuck it in the general fund, and then you guys allocate a certain amount to the fire department. And for the first 2 years, if you put that slide back up, we did fine. But this year, the 5 of you that are sitting up here, you guys passed a budget of $105,000 for the fire department, and the revenue collected will be $140,000. That's what you guys did. So to me, that's you're taking money. You didn't budget the money that you said you're going to collect. So I would like to know, how are we having a dedicated fee going into the general fund and not actually going into whatever this specifically is? you were talking about, you said something as that the city would purchase the equipment, but then the fire department owns? That didn't make any sense to me. So I guess, like, so if we spent our tax money on this bunker gear, which we still don't know if that's what we spent it on, do we, the city, own it? Does the 501c own it? We paid for it. Like, it's very muddy. Who owns what and how, I don't know. I'd like to first just know if we owned it or did we buy the bunker gear? And then the other, if we don't account for their money, how do we know how much to budget for them? So do they just come and say that they raised this? I don't understand how that works. I'm gonna leave the last one alone. That's all the questions I had. I think the question I've been asked, I'll ask an uncomfortable question. To date, I believe it's $259,259 that the city has collected under the guise that we were going to give this to the fire department. And it's an illegal fee. What's going to happen with all that money? And I think that's probably a question for your legal counsel. So, thank you.
Jeremy, a statement of fact, was our city attorney consulted about this fee?
Our city attorney, well, once this was brought to our attention recently, we did have conversations and we did talk about it. But as far as when the fee was instituted, I did not specifically find any information that supports that, or does not support it for that fact. I don't want to make it seem like just because I didn't find it, it doesn't exist. I'm saying I did not.
Like, for
locate
instance, there could be a phone call that wasn't recorded.
It could have been a phone call, it could have been an email, but I did do as thorough of a search as I could, and I did not find something specifically that indicated that legal counsel suggested or recommended that we could do it. I have had conversations with the previous city manager who did advise me that he did have conversations with the legal counsel. He even pointed me in the direction of potentially emails that might support that. I did not locate that information, but I did attempt to locate it. And again, I don't want to say that that doesn't exist. I'm just saying that I didn't locate it.
No, understood.
I would like to ask a question. Were the citizens asked their opinion about changing from the $1 voluntary fee to the $5 mandatory fee prior to this ordinance being written and that fee instituted? Did we do town hall meetings? Did we talk to the residents about this, or we just went ahead and did it?
All I can say is it was in a budget workshop a couple of times. And so those were the discussions that were had, and nobody that I remember stood up and specifically said anything that I can remember off the top of my head
Because
in budget work.
I agree with Brandon. I was talking to the Meals on Wheels lady the other day at the rec center, and there's a lot of people that cannot afford to pay their bill, and $5 is a lot of money for those that are barely even getting by. So I'm just curious if the public was informed about this. God knows I got chewed out last night because, hey, don't do an ordinance before you have a town hall meeting. So, I'm just curious about that.
I guess another statement of fact, Jeremy, or Cynthia, I'm not sure who, but the discrepancy that was pointed out by Kristen about we're projected to bring in revenue of 140, but our projected budget expenditures of 35 less than that. Is that money just sit in the account until it's needed later, or what is any sort of explanation of why that budget discrepancy of the revenue versus expenses exists?
Well, we've had conversations about this, and I've had some in-depth conversations about, what happens when let's say we raise 200,000 and we only have $180,000 in expenses, because that could easily happen.
Yeah.
More residents could move in and change that number. People could move out, there's a whole host of scenarios where the revenue raise could change. And at the end of the day, we're doing our best to estimate budget, what we expect to happen, based on history, based on the data that we have available. So in our conversations, my understanding was that if there were excess funds in a account, that it would have the ability to roll over into excess, what was the term that we used? Reserve, excuse me. It would be able to roll over into a reserve fund status. I don't believe in, and I'm sure no one here believes in, collecting funds for a purpose and not using it for that purpose.
But if it's in the general fund, there is an ability for it to be transferred to a use other than the fire department. So we would, as we clean this up, we need to restrict that money.
Yeah,
Because we're collecting it under the premise that this is going to the fire department. So it should not be available to be transferred to other departments, in my opinion.
Well, and we already have systems that are similar to that. For example, the airport, funds that are raised at the airport generally stay at the airport. So there's already, history that supports that we can do that. We just have to put it in writing and make it an official practice.
I think I would like to see that happen, especially if it's being named in the fire department's name. I guess that's it then. I'd make a motion if you're ready.
The question is, if we're projecting to collect 140,000, which is a little more than 10,000 a month, $5 fee on 2,000 people, but at some point, this has got to be voluntary.
Yeah.
Right, Andrew? Like right away?
Correct. That should be the subject of at least one motion.
So Mayor, I'll make a motion to modify the existing mandatory volunteer fire department fee of $5 to make it a voluntary volunteer fire department fee of $5.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made and seconded. Mitch did. Dunham? Oh, sorry, I didn't know.
Tyrone will have to abstain because he's on the fire department board, so he
Thank
will
you.
be voting. I do have a
I wrote-
question
oh,
though.
sorry.
Okay, and I'm all for doing this voluntary. This has been as a mandatory on the deal. How do we let everyone know what's going to be the procedure to do this? Because this is not going to be right now overnight. Yeah, we have to let everyone know. We have to know which way we're doing and how we're going to do it. I'm either for Jennifer or Jeremy to explain, please.
And my recommendation would be that we work with legal to make sure that we have a process that outlines what that transition looks like. We have a hard date that becomes effective, and we may not even need legal for that purpose, but just to be safe, I generally like to make sure.
Ask the questions, no problem. Just, keep it under, 15 minutes.
Yes, absolutely.
Keep it under, oh, all right, so I have a motion and a second, sorry. Do you have?
I was just gonna say, I know we received a lot of flack earlier in the year for looking into the fire department, but also the other nonprofits. But I think it's a valid example where I'm not suggesting that the city's funds are being misappropriated by any means, but this is an organization, and this was the one organization that I think all of us were turning a blind eye to. But it turns out that there has been nefarious work in the fire department that has resulted in a warrant being issued, and of course everyone's innocent until proven guilty. But I think it's just getting out of the mindset that we can't question anything and just make sure that there's accountability, make sure there's structure, make sure there's controls in place that allows for things to be caught, which thankfully the fire department was able to catch it. But with such a small budget, we've got to make sure that we're doing things to protect the nonprofits we are supporting and our city funds.
Thank you, and that's a very good point, and we're gonna do better going forward.
Yep, absolutely.
Dunham,
Yes.
Meeks,
Yes.
Tyrone is going to abstain, and Mitch?
Yes.
All right, so it passes, and then, I'm pretty sure the city manager will follow up with
Correct.
us And we all kind of have our, what's she say?
Well, and this is a line item budget that's categorized by category, everything that we have, we have invoices for. So we can actually get you each individual thing, depending on what time range you want, is how long it might take. But like, for example, if you wanted year to date, we could get you that faster than if you wanted the last 5 years.
You're wanting to look at the invoices, Kristen, correct?
For that one particular fiscal year?
Yeah, so that particular year, I think it's FY '24. You know, that was the year, you called it an outlier. It's the 197,000. So, you know, again, that was the first year the promise was made,
Need to go
we're
in
going to
there.
buy XYZ. Did we buy XYZ?
Yeah.
And that
It-
doesn't really show.
If there is a records being requested, it would be an open records request and you know that
Yes,
process. but
okay.
We can definitely get that.
And
Okay,
then,
for us to stay in the law of life, I need to adjourn.
Okay.
And then y'all can speak, okay? Yeah, so this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Andrew.